Hi guys. So after a long time I'm back with a summary video of another chapter of private wealth management for level 3. I've tried to keep it very short and try to cover the important points, but even after viewing this video you will have to go back and do the practice sums because each sum is different. It requires a different logic to be applied, but yeah, this video will help you to create your base. So I've created this for myself as I am also appearing for level 3, but I thought it will be helpful to everyone who's appearing for L3 and would want to have a shortcut to understand what this chapter is all about. So this is the reading 29 from study session 12, private wealth management. So I'm going to cover 4 important topics over here, which is approach to taxation, the types of taxation, and tax location. Tax location over here means is the account or the type of benefits that you're getting in the account. What are the post tax return risk and return profile? So this will allow you to understand how much is the impact of taxes on your return and the risk, so that at the end the agenda of the portfolio is to achieve the post tax return. So that we'll have a look at how there are multiple strategies to achieve that and what are the impact. And there are some post tax alpha strategies. There are some workarounds, some loopholes in the taxation system. There are some workarounds available in changing the location of your investments, or rotating your investments from tax a non-tax benefit account to a tax benefit account, or a location, or changing your accounting policy or your costing policy. So there are different ways in you can generate the tax post tax alpha, which is your gain over and above your normal returns. This post tax alpha basically means the skill of the investment manager to understand the impact of taxes on your return. So that is more on the understanding the taxation and utilizing it for the benefit of the account. So let's get started. So approach to taxation and types of taxes. So the first 3 items are quite intuitive and simple. There are 3 types of taxes: consumption, income, and wealth based. In India, GST is the consumption tax. Income taxes that we all are paying on our salary or business. And wealth based tax is basically whenever there is a transfer of wealth from say for example, if Ambani is supposed to transfer or separate his wealth in equal parts to his daughters and son. So whoever is going to gain that wealth, there will be a taxation, right? Who will pay the tax, what will be the treatment, and everything is a separate topic which is in estate planning. But right now just understand that the wealth based tax is basically on the entire wealth which is being transferred, renamed, or whatever. It's on the entire wealth, right? So the next part is the marginal tax. So as the name suggests, marginal means the last the optimum level. So the tax rate which is applicable up to the last dollar amount or the highest tax slab is your marginal tax. So in India, above I think so about 10 lakhs is your 30% tax. Yeah, so 30% will become your marginal tax. Global tax regimes means what are the types of taxes treatments that are available in the world. Common progressive tax is the most common that you will find in most of the developing nations, or nations which are are trying to attract investments, or trying to attract newer technologies. Light LTCG is another booster that the government gives, so that people are invested for longer amount of time, and the short term volatility is lower in the markets. The investment is coming from a longer term horizon. And heavy LTCG is something that the long term capital gains are taxed at a higher rate. So there are very few countries which are following heavy LTCG. From a concept point of view, the most investor friendly or the most business friendly is the common progressive tax, and most investor friendly is the light LTCG tax, and the worst tax treatment could be the heavy LTCG tax. It depends on the scenario of the country. So that was the introduction part. Now the 3 important terms in the first and second reading is the tax drag. So as the name suggests, tax drag means losses due to the taxes. So the formula is gains with no tax minus gains post tax. So in a scenario like this, suppose you have a gains with no tax as 100 and there is a 20 rupees tax and your loss, so 80 rupees is your gains post tax, so your tax drag is 20 rupees. So on 100 rupees of income, the tax drag is 20 rupees, so your tax drag percentage is 20%. Simple, nothing to be really worried about. Okay, accrual based taxes is which are taxed on unbooked income and hence leads to lower future income as post tax income is compounded. The formula is very simple. The future value of investment will be the return that you are generating after tax compounded to the end period. So in India, if you invest in long term FDs, bank FDs, on 31st March of every year, government will deduct the TDS from your income. Now you are not going to get this income because you are invested in a long term FD. So this income gets compounded into your principal. But the tax on the income is deducted on 31st of March every year. So what is happening, suppose your income was actually 10 rupees and there was a TDS of 10%, right? So 10% of 10 rupees is 1 rupees. So 9 will be your income which will go back to your principal of 100. Had this not been there, your principal would have been 110. But because there is a tax on the accrual, your principal is 109. Now if I go back to this statement that I have made over here and let me just erase all this thing, what we are saying over here is leads to lower future income as post tax income is compounded. Now my tax income plus my principal will be my accrual income plus my principal should have been 100 plus 10, but because there is a 1 rupee TDS deducted by the government, my principal is going to be 100 plus 9. So essentially now 109 is less than 110. Since there is a tax, my future income will be lower than it actually should have been, because I am not getting this 1 rupee, but the government is deducting the tax out of this one. So my compounding is happening on 109, whereas it should have happened on 110. That is the reason why people tell you that invest in fixed income or tax free accounts, or invest in equity and defer your taxes, because once you invest in FD, and most of the people don't understand that the compounding effect is post tax. So that is one of the important things. If your parents or your any elder one who's pro FD, you can take an Excel sheet and make them understand that in the longer term, in 5, 7, 10 years, the compounding effect is too much. So this is all accrual based taxes. It is basically taxes on the income that has not been received. Deferred tax gains is very simple. It is like if I invest in Reliance today in 2020, now I have the control when I want to sell Reliance, right? Government will tax a short term capital gain to me if I sell it within 1 year, and long term capital gain to me if I sell it over 1 year or 2 year, whatever is the criteria. But the control to sell it in short term or sell it in long term relies with me. So if Reliance performs well and gives me 10% say CAGR, this 10% will entirely be compounded in my principal. There is going to be no deduction on the taxes. So what I have done, actually, I have deferred my taxes. Over here I am not able to defer, because even if I am not receiving the income, the tax is being computed on the accrual. But here the control is with me to either sell it in short term or long term, and whenever I sell, there will be a tax on the capital gain. There is no tax on the income as such. So a very simple example we'll take. First I will explain you this part, then we'll go to the B part. So the simple example that I'm going to take is basically invest in Reliance and you're getting 10% return. So let's say only for 1 year as of now, for simplicity perspective. So your future value will be 1 plus 10%, and suppose you sell it after 1 year, there is a 10% LTCG, so 1 minus 10%, right? plus TCGB is something that you need to understand. Over here it's quite simple, 10% is your return and 10% is your tax on that return because you are selling it now. Capital gains means only when you sell the amount, the investment. Accrual basis, irrespective if you sell or you don't sell it, the government will tax you. Now what is happening in this, the second term? Okay, now there could be two scenarios, right? Let us consider two scenarios wherein in the first scenario your investment amount is 100 and that you have, suppose this period is from May and your investment amount in April was 100 and right now also the investment amount is 100, right? So there is no adjustment to be made, right? Because in April your amount was 100 and in May when you are actually looking at your returns or whatever, or you are trying to compute it on the as is basis, you are looking for a base value. Your base value was 100 when you invested the amount and now also it is 100. So your base remains the same, there is no change in the base. Now suppose let's take an example wherein your base value was not 100 but it was 90 in April and now it is 100. Now what is the ratio? 90 divided by 100 is 0.9. So 0.9 times tax on capital gain, say 10%. Let's example, let's say 10% for now. That needs to get added back to the total future value. Now there is a reason for it, right? You had invested at 90 rupees. Right now the principal amount is 100 rupees. Now you are already being taxed over here on the return, right? What is the amount that that the investment had been made prior to the start of the analysis? It was 90. So your base is 0.9. So your tax amount that needs to be charged, the tax amount that needs to be charged should be from 0.90 because you had invested 90 rupees and now you are exiting at suppose say 120 rupees example. So actually you have a 30 rupees gain. So this needs to be taxed. So over here in the example which is given in the Schwezer book, you can see there are two examples. One they have taken the 90 as the base and the other they have taken 115 as the base, right? So what is this doing actually? This is actually increasing your future value after tax. Now you have to think logically why it is increasing your future value, because it's quite intuitive, okay? Because there could be different ways to compute it, okay? You can also take it as a very simple holding period return, say 90 as your investment, 120 is your selling point, 30 is the gain upon 90. That could be your your gain 30 upon 90, that is 1 by 3. So 33% is your income. You can be taxed on that. You can use the same formula. You can use this formula or you can use the formula given in the book. The formula given in the book included this B term is basically to make you understand that your analysis period and your investment period could be different, right? You could analyze in 2021 but your investment could have been in 2020. So it is important to know at what value you had invested and what is the current value, because that is the amount needs to get added back to the future value. The reason is because you are being taxed over here, right? Since you have been taxed over here, your initial amount, which is to avoid the double taxation, you need to add it back. Are you I think so this is quite confusing, but if you go to the example that is given in the book, it's quite simple. But to make it intuitive, just understand that suppose you had invested 1000 rupees over here, we'll go with the formula. and you have a 10% return, and you have to pay 10% on that, right? Now you have paid the taxes, say suppose X amount. Now the taxes that you have paid is on the final amount. So the base value, suppose you had invested 990, so from 990 to 1000, the 10 rupees is the ratio. That tax is already gone, you don't need to add it back, you don't need to pay it again, so that needs to be added back. I'm not sure if I'm clear, but that is the way it is. Okay, let's move on. Annual wealth taxes, a very simple thing that which are taxed on the entire wealth amount and not just the returns. This includes principal invested and compounded returns too. So the difference was, in the earlier accrual you were taxing the rate. In the capital gain you are taxing the amount, right? But what are you doing over here? If you see the N, which is above the rate over here, it is saying the rate return is compounded, right? And on the final amount the tax is applicable. But look at the formula over here. Over here the returns and the wealth tax are getting compounded together. So that is why the wealth taxes, the tax rate of wealth will always be lower. So in a country where you have a capital gain of say 20%, example, your wealth tax will not be more than 2% to 3%, because the base of wealth is too big, right? It is getting compounded on the entire value. So if you put it as 20%, might as well it will take away the entire profits, right? So that doesn't make a sense. So since the base is too high, the wealth tax rate is too low, and this is usually seen in estate planning or really family offices. The concept of family offices, over there this annual wealth taxes are applicable. So there are specialized family offices which manage really large family investments like Tatas and the Ambanis, and say Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli, so on and so forth. So the wealth of these really rich individuals are managed by the specialized family offices. Blended taxes, okay, this is a little confusing on the latter part, but just go with the flow. Just believe whatever is given over there is right. There are different ways to achieve this, but I'm going to go with whatever is given in the book so that we save time. So blended taxes is basically a tax rate which is the weighted average tax rate of all the taxes: income, dividend, interest, capital gain accounts, wealth, etc., etc. So this is simple: weight of your income into tax of your income, weight of the dividend instrument into tax of the dividend, weight of capital gain plus tax of capital gain. There would be a fourth component over here which will say weight of unrealized gain loss into taxes of unrealized gain loss, right? There could be a fourth component, because here this is the booked amount, this is the booked amount. There could be some amount which is not booked, right? This could be your fourth component which will take your taxes to 100%. Now over here let's understand. Now over here till here it's clear. So suppose you have a portfolio which has 10% invested in income accounts, and it has a 10% income tax rate also, 40% in dividend account, and it has 20% for tax rate for dividend, and let's say 20% it is in capital gain account and 10% is your capital gain. So your weighted average tax will be very simple. It will be 0.10 into 0.10 plus 0.40 into 0.20 plus 0.20 into 0.10, right? Simple weighted average. So we have been doing this since level 1. So that will be a weighted average tax. So what will be your effective tax rate will be your pre-tax return multiplied by the tax. So what is your post-tax return? It is pre-tax return into 1 minus tax rate. Pre-tax return is R and tax rate over here is weighted average tax. Till here it must be very simple, clear. Now what we are saying over here, let's go by a simple maths formula, forget everything for now. We considered that over here there could be a fourth component which will say weighted average of unrealized gain loss into returns of the unrealized gain loss, sorry, taxes of the unrealized gain loss. So this invisible fourth component, we have to compute that. So for that I am going to compute the taxes on the unrealized gain loss. What is the component which you have already considered in the weighted average tax? It is income, dividend and capital gain. What is the component which is not taken care of? It is the weight of the unrealized gain loss. Put that in the numerator. And what will it be divided by? By the tax rate, which does not consist of the unrealized gain loss, right? That is how you will get the tax. Simple maths formula. That is what is written over here. Weight of the unrealized gain loss 1 minus tax. Now what is the weight of unrealized gain loss? It's very simple. It is 1 minus weight of I plus weight of D plus weight of capital gain, right? See 10, 40, 20, we had this values, right? So over here the weighted average weight of the average unrealized gain loss will be 30%. Simple. If we have this as income as 10, this as 40, this is 20, 20 plus 40, 60 plus 10, 70, 1 minus 70% is 30%, right? So weight of unrealized gain loss will be 30%. So we have got the tax rate for weighted. Now a very initial formula that we did for taxation is basically the return that you are earning compounded for n period, right? Apply the tax on that and add the tax which is already paid. This was the formula that we spoke earlier. A modification of that formula is used for your blended tax rate. So the first term remains the same. Second term over here you will carry the unrealized gain loss because all other gain losses are already covered in the weighted average tax. This remains the same logic that I made you understand over there. The portion of invested amount, B having the base, right? So if you go through the book, it's quite confusing, but if you think logically, take all one step at a time, put numbers in this in Excel, and it's very easy. Okay, from I think so from an exam perspective, if we know it till year also, right, till year, it is quite simple. I have tried to memorize this logically. I am not able to do it, so most probably I'm going to mug it up, but there's no other option. You cannot be an expert in all the fields, so I'm going to mug it up. But if you have over here there's a logical explanation, but over here this explanation goes too deep, and I don't think so that it will go into our long-term memory, because we are not those who are in taxes, they can make good sense of it, but I am not from that background, so I will most of that I am going to mug it up. No option, right? Accrual equivalent return and tax rate is basically what the author is saying over here is that there could be a rate which will reflect all your income, dividend, everything. What they are saying is basically the return that you are earning from investment is a function of the future value of your investment after tax divided by the investment. Quite logical. Raised to 1 by n. Why raised to 1 by n? Because right now you are computing the return, not computing the future value. So from future value, if you want to compute the return, let me take some other color. Yeah, 1 minute. Let us start again. Yeah. So how do you compute return? So suppose I have earned 150 rupees on a 1500 rupees investment. What is my return? 1 by 10 is 10%. Simple. I want to compute my return. I will take future value after investment. What is my future value after investment? 1500 plus 150, 1650 divided by investment 1500 raised to 1 by n. Let us take one period minus 1. How much will this be? I don't know. I'll just do a calculation. I can do that mathematically also, but I cannot show you mathematically, so I have to show you this way. 1.1, and I'm saying this minus 1 in the formula, and if I put it in percentage terms, right, it's going to be 10%. So what did we just do? I have not considered this formula. I computed it raw and I got the 10%. If I use this formula, I get this same answer because I have considered it for one period. When there is more than one period, this formula becomes important. I don't know why the author has confused us. This is simply computing the return on your investment. And as you all know, how do you compute the taxes on your investment? So how do you compute the tax? What is your return? Right? We are going to compute what is our return. So the formula over here is 1 minus RAE percentage divided by R percentage is your tax accrual equivalent, right? So how do you understand? How do you make a sense out of it? Let's say that this is one formula for computing the after tax return, right? Now the author has again confused us by giving us another formula to compute the RAE. RAE, what the author says, is also 1 minus, okay, I'm sorry, I don't know how to get back on this one. Okay, cool. So the author has again confused us. So let us see how they have confused us. So the author is saying that come on, yeah. So the author is saying that our RAE, the formula that over here, is also equivalent to the return on your investment multiplied by the tax. Simple. Over here, what we were doing? Future value after tax, right? We took 1650 over here. Divided by investment amount. Since I am taking the after tax value over here, both of these will give me the same result. So this is equivalent to this. By formula, this is equivalent to this, right? RAE is also equal to the return pre-tax multiplied by the tax rate. And if you just substitute this, you get this formula. Tax of accrual equivalent tax is 1 minus post-tax return upon pre-tax return. Simple. Got it? Let's move ahead. Okay, this is very simple. So approach to taxation and types of taxes. So tax location, as we earlier explained, tax location does not mean the actual location. This could be the countries and regions where these types of accounts are available, and also this could be because of the types of accounts within the same location also, right? Now I can have a TDA account, right? I might be an institute which is exempted from taxes. I could have a TEA account also, or I could have a TDA investment vehicle also. It could be anything. So location, yeah, it means in the curriculum it is pointing towards the countries and everything which is written over there. But logically, you just think that you can have a account within the country also. You can have multiple types of tax account. So what is the crux of this discussion? So the TDA, it is the tax deferred account. What it is saying that pre-tax fund is invested and all gains are taxed on withdrawal. So over here, what it means is, suppose let's take a hypothetical example that a salary is around 1 lakh, okay, per month, and there is no taxation on your income as such, right? As of now, example, and you are investing say 50,000 out of this into a TDA account, which is expected to earn 5% annually. And after 1 year, you're going to remove this money. Suppose you sell it after 1 year. So what will be your percentage of taxes? 50,000 into the return, 5% post tax. This is going to be your future value. Simple. You don't need to even remember the formula. You just need to know that TDA takes the pre-tax amount. The amount you invest in a TDA account is not taxed initially. There is no income tax on the TDA account. Opposite to that is the exemption account. Why? Because the post-tax amount is deposited. So suppose I want to invest in ELSS, right? Suppose example, I want to invest in ELS, equity linked savings scheme, and I am getting a salary of 1 lakh per month, and I am already paying say 20,000 on my taxes, right? So this is the post-tax amount 80,000. Now on this 80,000 I invest is 50,000, and expected return is again 5%. 1 minus tax over here will be 0. Why? Because I have already paid the tax on my income. So the tax exemption account are those accounts which will take your post-tax income, and there will be no taxes on the withdrawal. So obviously there is going to be some withdrawal rules like your 3-year lock-in, 5-year lock-in, 2-year lock-in, depends on the product that you are investing in. Okay, it's nothing to really think on. This is another simple thing that they have mentioned. I don't know why they have confused us so much. It is very simple that post-tax return and risk characteristics. So taxes obviously reduce the returns, and since the variability of the returns is reduced, the standard deviation and volatility is also reduced. Simple, yeah. 10% is your pre-tax return, 1% is your tax, your post-tax return is 9%. Now in the book, if you go to the description of this, they have just put a formula. After tax RAT is R1 minus T, and standard deviation of return is standard deviation of 1 minus T. Now you are going to minus something from 1. Obviously the standard deviation is going to go down. So what is happening? The returns are going down, the risk is also going down. So the returns and risks, and this is the actual case, right? Because a lot of wealth managers and portfolio managers, everyone, even in the ads that you see, they show that mutual funds are good to invest and everything and so on and so forth, but no one talks about the taxes, because at the end what you get in your account is the after tax return, and the risk that you carry is also the after tax risk. So it is very important to take taxes into consideration. Okay. So in the earlier slides we discussed that tax location based strategic investment placement and rotation of assets in tax beneficial accounts will lead to generation of post tax alpha. Alpha is extra income, right, or extra return. Post tax alpha is basically due to effective tax management. So in your book it is there are some scenarios which are given as to how you can change your allocation in taxable and non-taxable TEA, TDA account. So this is basically an effective management of your amount in placing it in various portfolios, so that your post tax return increases, not because of the market return, because of the effective tax management, right? So whenever you are going to or we are going to be good in financial advisors or portfolio managers, always keep make sure that you have a post tax view, right? Because that can help us to give the post tax alpha just by managing the amount well in the different accounts that are available. Tax loss harvesting is a very common thing that almost everyone must be doing, right? It's basically processing or harvesting your loss positions in order to offset taxes generated from the profit book. So suppose I had a 10,000 profit, and on this 10,000 I had to pay 20% of taxes. So effectively I have a 2,000 tax liability, right? That is going to be the case. That is going to be the case, right? And suppose in the other stock I have a let me just erase this. Yeah, in the other stock I have a 8,000 loss. So what is the tax liability on this 8,000? It is 8,000 into 20%, which is 1,600. So I can offset 1,600. It is as simple as that. There is nothing to nothing to be really computed over there, right? Because at the end it's simple match. I have to pay the taxes on my net income. So what do people do on 31st March? They will book 10,000 profit in Reliance, and they will also book 8,000 loss in Tata Motors, example. This is tax loss harvesting, and they'll buy it on the very next day. Most of the managers, they buy it on the very next day, because actually they never wanted to sell it, but they just wanted to preserve their tax outflow as of now, because money has a time value, right? So you need to save your money right now. So there is a lot of things which goes into portfolio management. It's not that simple. Okay, so there are two accounting treatments that usually portfolio managers do, right? This is HIFO and LIFO. So LIFO you must be aware from the level 1 and level 2. HIFO is basically, if the sale price is higher than the basis price, this will minimize the gain, capital gains, that is tax due now. So what does this mean is, the highest in and first out. So the highest amount, but suppose you have bought Reliance at multiple prices, say 2,000, 2,100, 2,200, so on and so forth. Now you are selling it at 2,400, right? Okay, so you are selling it at 2,400. Now you will not take 2,000 as your base, 2,100. Suppose you had 10, 10, 10, 30 securities over here, and you are selling it at 2,400, and you are selling 10 securities at 2,400. You will take the highest in. What is the highest in over here? 2,200 as your this thing. So what will happen? Your tax will be only, say, 10%. 10 into 200 will be 2,000. 2,000 is your profit, so your tax will be lower. Had you taken 2,000 as your base, your profit would have been 4,000, right? So highest in first out, you used to first of all take the lesser impact on your this profits. This could be the other way around also, right? There could be another example also. In this scenario, there could be another example: first purchase, second purchase, third purchase. First purchase at 4,000, second purchase at 5,000, third purchase is at, say, 7,000, and you sold it at 6,500. Ideally your weighted average price will be somewhere around 6,000, example. But now what you want to do, highest in. What is the highest in? 7,000. What is the sell price? 6,500. So instead of paying the taxes, you are saving your taxes, because you are going to generate a loss over here of 500. So this is one of the accounting treatment. Similarly is the LIFO. If the future taxes expectations are going to be up or down, basis that you can change your accounting treatment. If you go in the books, there are some very simple examples that are given. You can go through them. I'm not going to solve these sums over here, because I'm going to practice it myself on my on my journal too. The last point over here the author is mentioning is the mean variance optimization can be used to generate tax based optimal portfolio. That is quite simple. So we have learned about the MVO, and what we know about the MVO, it takes all the asset classes, say stocks, bonds, etc., etc., right? But when we did the MVO, we did not consider that there is a taxable account, there is a TDA account, there is a TEA account. We had no such criteria. If you add these as different parameters to the MVO process and ask the machine to optimally allocate your taxes, tax benefit types, the allocation which has the post tax optimal return, you might use the machine generated algorithms to have a post tax MVO. So right now MVO is basically what? It just takes your return profile, it takes your risk profile, and it tries to gain the maximum return at the minimum risk, and so on and so forth. So as the return increases, the risk also increases. But what over here we are adding is the parameters of taxable account, non-taxable account, TEA account, TDA account. So based on the combination of asset classes and the tax account, system will generate a optimally efficient portfolio. So this was it from taxation perspective. I know it is quite confusing, but even I am really confused on this chapter because we are not habituated to solve sums in L3 unlike L2. So I am going to do a lot of calculations of this from my book. So let's hope for the best. Thank you.